Okay, it's all yours.
All right, good afternoon. I will not take up too much time. Some of this information, I'm sure many of you are aware of, but as I've been meeting with different districts, going over upcoming projects specific to E-rate, I just wanted to make sure that, especially for those of you that are responsible for making decisions once some bids come in, specifically for category 1 items, which are, internet services. There have been some questions as to, why when you're looking at the bottom line dollar amounts, sometimes the lack of pricing that's coming in looks so much larger than another bid. And we just wanted to make sure something that we're, not able to put in that information is everything that's included in what we consider a bundle pricing. So although the pricing is higher, our services are covering firewall, virus protection, intrusion monitoring from outside testing, dual paths to the internet, filtering and management, support and troubleshooting. So when you're looking at those bids that are coming into you for your category 1 service, if you were to go with that lower amount, which I know just sometimes as it comes across your desk, that seems the most feasible, just wanting to remind all of the districts that all of those items would then need to be additional purchases by your district in order to have the security levels for your IT department, staff, students, the whole district, what each of those things are going to then cost that are already included in the bundle pricing. So just something that I wanted to make sure I was getting into the hands of treasurers, and then I will be talking to the superintendents next week. It will be included in my board meeting as well. Just it's E-rate season, so I know a couple people have already submitted. And bids are starting to be submitted. So I just wanted to make sure I got this information to everyone that might be involved in that process. That's really all I had, Jake. Just wanted to make sure everyone was aware unless there's questions.
Steph, I got a quick question.
Okay.
If we buy that stuff, when that stuff is bundled with LACA's price, we're getting the E-rate funding for that, correct?
Correct. So then it's all able to be covered in the E-rate reimbursement, as opposed to, if you're taking that, net lower bid from just a direct provider, then all of the purchasing of this would need to come straight from your budget. It can't be covered in E-rate funds.
Okay, that's what I was wondering. Thank you.
Yep. All right. Thank you, Jake.
All right, thank you. All right, there we go. Okay, Stephanie, I don't have anything else for you, so I'll let you know if anybody has any questions. We'll get it sent over to you. Okay, so some housekeeping. If you guys need to contact us, continue to reach out to us by phone or use that fiscal@laca.org email. Just wanted to remind you, if you haven't heard already, we will be moving to a new office location beginning of January. So we're kind of already in the process of that right now. It is going to be located on the CTech campus. So I put our street address down there right now. Some of you have reached out to see if there's going to be any downtime during our move. And from what I'm being told, a lot of our equipment will be moved in the evenings or during non-work scheduled time. So there should be very, very limited downtime, or if any at all, for you at the district. So hopefully that's not an issue. keep you posted on that if anything changes. Let's see, it's a little bigger for you guys to see. Okay, so the next thing I wanted to talk about was this. It has to do with some district audits and some questions we've been getting from treasurers regarding software. If this particular like spreadsheet screenshot that we have listed here looks familiar to you, this is part of a district audit. I think it's like an AOS audit that they're doing. Because your software, your USAS and USPS and inventory databases are all basically hosted at the servers at the Management Council, this is how they've suggested that you fill out this piece of information when you get presented with this in your audits. Basically, with the focus of what they're looking for is software that's managed at the district, not necessarily software that's hosted by others. So if you see this, in any of your audit processes, this is just kind of a heads up on how to complete this form. If you have any other questions, feel free to reach out. We've also received quite a few questions regarding setting up multi-factor or two-factor authentication within each of the different softwares. We are discussing internally right now how to make that happen. Actually adding that feature to your databases isn't super difficult, but there's some complex issues that we're kind of dealing with behind the scenes on how this is going to work. So we will be reaching out to each district, it's probably going to be more on a one-by-one basis over the next weeks and months to try to get this set up for you guys. I know some of you aren't looking forward to this, and some of you, are because you've reached out and are asking for it because your auditors are, maybe slapping your wrist that this needs to happen. So we're gonna, we are discussing it pretty much every day and trying to figure out a way to make this work for you guys. So we should be reaching out fairly soon with a plan of action on this feature. A little EMIS update. I think I remember checking and everybody submitted their 5-year forecasts by the 30th. Next collection on 5-year forecast isn't until April. Let's see. And then currently staff reporting is going on through the end of January. So we have some information on that now. We covered some topics on that, had a good discussion this morning on staff reporting. So if your EMIS or payroll people have any questions regarding that, feel free to have them reach out. Just wanted to give you a reminder if you have a equipment inventory database to close out FY24. We do have a link here to the checklist from our website. Nothing's really changed from previous years of closing equipment inventory. So if you have any issues with that process, feel free to reach out. For this year, when you close, someone at the district should receive a report bundle with the inventory reports at the end of the year as part of the closing process. Currently, the inventory database still does not have a file archive within the software. And along those lines, I wanted to let you all know, if you were not part of our software meeting a couple weeks ago, the file archive is one of the major changes that are coming in 2025 to the state software products. Because the databases are kind of getting bigger year by year by year, they are going to be taking the file archive piece out of the software and making it kind of its own application. So USAS, USPS, and inventory will all send information to a file archive application. And along those lines, they are also working with a feature called single sign-on, which means that when you log into one of the databases, you should be able to access the other databases with that one sign-on feature. So that'll be kind of nice. So you don't have to sign into 3 or 4 different applications when you need to bounce around. So that's all coming in 2025. I don't really know what all that looks like right now because they're kind of in the beginning stages of getting that developed. So employee self-service and Nippy Dippy update. So we do have the Google Doc out there for anybody who has any issues or questions that they need to have addressed. Since employee self-service is kind of the brand new product, this Google Doc has been very helpful in keeping track of your district requests. We've actually had a ton of those requests, answered and installed into the software. So you guys have been a very big help in getting, employee self-service improved throughout the last few months. If there's anything else that comes up with that program, feel free to add to that Google Doc. I do check it daily with any new additions and in things I need to kind of pass along to state software. One of the features in ESS is the timesheet functionality. We have had a couple districts reach out who are not using like an electronic timesheet program about, just with interest with that application. And I currently don't have much experience with it since no one has used it in the past. And I haven't spent much time looking at this new feature in ESS. So over the next couple of months, I'm going to try to gather as much information and knowledge as I can on the timesheet program. And I hope to offer a demo for any district who is interested February or March, maybe of 2025. I'll kind of keep you guys posted when I come up with a good date and time frame on offering that demo. Ippy Dippy update. So the kiosk version of Ippy Dippy is still going to run through the end of June. We've received some information on the new version of Ippy Dippy that state software is creating. It will be its own independent application and not part of the ESS application. So it's going to be just a brand new product. Again, we're not sure what that looks like because it's still in the beginning stages of being developed. We do have a couple of volunteers from LACA districts who are included in a focus group who are helping to develop that. And they should be meeting on that within the next couple of weeks to kind of give their input and make sure this Ippy Dippy application is similar to the one you're using currently. Okay. And that should, I guess I didn't put that in here. It should be ready to go by next summer. So at least that's what I've been told. So I don't know what that migration process is going to look like, but I'm sure it'll be some work. All right, we do have some upcoming meetings scheduled. The software update we had a couple of weeks ago, I thought was pretty informative. I'm going to try to continue to come up with a lot of variety of topics and update you on all of the changes in the state software products and try not to miss any of these every other month type of meetings. So I have one scheduled for January 23rd and then another one on March the 20th. I would expect that March one to be kind of a big one because by that time, I think the new file archive product should be available. And, there might be some other changes and updates that we have on additional applications that are coming. And then we've got our dates for the roundtables and fiscal advisory meetings on here as well. Hopefully it's still okay that you guys, I've got these scheduled on the same day. Makes for a long day for me, but hopefully it's okay for you guys. And I like to have these at the beginning of the month to give you guys enough time to do what you need to do for the months that we're preparing for. So. I know I might have sent out a wrong date on today's meeting at one of my correspondences, but I apologize for that. I also wanted to let you know that I'm probably always going to schedule these meetings on Thursday if I can help it. So. All right, anybody have any questions or comments or anything they'd like to discuss before we dive into the year-end procedure checklist? All right. me- I'm going to get a demo database open here so that I can show you guys some stuff as we go along. So bear with me. All right. So on the checklist, which I've provided a link in the PowerPoint, and this is also available on the accounting documentation page of our website. The very first page is just a checklist to kind of keep you, so you know where you're at, in your steps. We've tried to make this as comprehensive as we could, so that you didn't have to bounce back and forth to different checklists. So hopefully everything you need is in this one document. All right. So I'm just going to kind of go over the steps a little bit. If you have any questions along the way, please feel free to stop me. All right, so step one is just basically get a review and an understanding of what you need to report on your 1099s. I've tried to put some documentation and links to helpful resources out there so that you can get a basic understanding of what it is you need to report and a refresher if needed. I don't think I came across any major changes for this particular year, so but we just wanted to have that out there if you needed it. Step two is basically just review your vendors to make sure that those that need to receive a 1099 are set up properly. So I'm just going to kind of dive into the software, show you where I would recommend doing that. So under core vendors is where I would like for you to get started. I do have a little screenshot there of certain fields using the More button that you can add to your grid to make this a lot easier. So under the 1099 section, there's a type 1099. Under tax ID, there's the tax ID type and ID number. I also suggest using under amounts the year-to-date taxable total. And then another helpful field that I like to use is under other info is the last activity, which sorts through all of the transactions, and there's a field on your vendor records that shows when that vendor was last used in a transaction. So once you've added those fields to your grid, you can start kind of using some of these filters that I suggest to kind of narrow it down to the vendors who are going to get your 1099s. In the past, well, not in the past, this grid is kind of touchy. So the very first thing I suggest you always filter on when you are working within the vendor grid is always look at your active vendors. So always filter first on the active vendors first. If you don't, a lot of times you'll get an error, something like an excessive query or something like that. It's just because you have so many vendors in your grid it's just too much for the system to process at one time when filtering. So sorting to just look at your active vendors first will make that error typically not appear. Then the next filter I like to use is the type 1099. So these the way we have it set up here with the less than, greater than, kind of is a way of using the grid to give you anything that's not a non-1099 type. So it's giving you everything else. And then finally, on your year-to-date taxable totals, anything greater than or equal to 600. So once you have those three filters that have been used, you basically have your list of all of your 1099 vendors that you're looking at. So at this point, it's just a matter of you can look at the grid, make sure everyone has a tax ID type. If you find someone that was that was set up without one, you'll want to edit those and add in a tax ID type and a tax ID number or social security number if it's a person. And then there we go. Then once you return back to your grid, if everything looks good, you can move on. If you want to run just a basic report for you to keep, you can always use that report button at the top of your grid. The next step, I like to review. Yes, this goes to step 3. I like to look, so remove this type 1099 filter and basically just look at your vendors who are not marked with a 1099 type, and see if any of them maybe should receive a 1099. So if you use non-1099 and keep that filter for anything 600 or over. Another thing I like to do is, and this is why I added that last activity feature, is anything with a transaction of this year, just to make sure that and you're seeing 2021 in this database because it's really, 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 really old. And that's why that doesn't work in my database, but it will in yours. So I apologize for that confusion, but for yours, it's going to give you any vendor who's had activity this year, and also has a year-to-date taxable total. So you can review that list, make sure if there are employees in here that do need to be receiving 1099s, you can switch their 1099 type, add their tax ID type and ID number, so that they will then get a 1099. So you want to make sure you review that list as well. Step 4 is verify the vendor names and addresses. So basically, the easiest way to kind of review the addresses is to run in your report manager the SSDT 1099 vendor report. So when you run that, there is a filter in there so that it's looking for anything over a certain amount. So if you put that $600 in there, it should give you a report that has all of your 1099 vendors on there over that amount. And then what you can do is you can see what type of, they're kind of grouped by 1099 type. You can also look at the name of the 1099 vendor and review their addresses to make sure everything's set up properly. Just you also have another kind of one last chance to kind of make check your tax ID numbers, tax ID types, make sure everything looks good. You may find, and this is kind of a common thing that we get asked probably at least once or twice every year, is if you kind of come across the same vendor name where maybe 2 separate vendors were set up and used throughout the year, where you may want to combine those vendors into one. so that they're only getting one 1099 instead of two 1099s, which could be confusing. And that also may affect the year-to-date total, whereas, one vendor may have something less than 600 and another one may have something more, or whatever the case may be. That's just a situation that you might have, is having multiple vendors that should actually be combined into one. So there's kind of two separate ways that this can be fixed. And we kind of have those spelled out at the bottom of page 3 in the checklist. The first way I'm going to kind of suggest is go back to that core vendor grid. And what you can do is you can use what's called vendor adjustments, which is the old way that we've kind of talked to you about for years now, to reduce the year-to-date total on one vendor and add that same total to the other vendor. So you're basically, using vendor adjustments to combine your vendor amounts. So again, if you want to find that vendor adjustment option, you have to view the vendor record, and then the vendor adjustment button at the top is available. From there, you can click create your negative amount or positive amount, whatever which way you're moving your totals for, and that will adjust the year-to-date amount that gets reported on the 1099. The other way you can now do this is using a feature called vendor merge, which is a new feature. I've had a couple districts call, and we've kind of gone through these steps to merge some of their vendors. So if you have multiple vendors set up with the same tax ID type and tax ID number, they can be merged together. And if that's the case for your district, this can be done. Number one, I've got a link at the bottom I guess I have it. Oh yeah, at the very bottom of page 3 that says merge vendors. So there's a whole section in the manual that talks about this procedure and what you need to do. But just to kind of go over it briefly, if you go back and view that, one of the vendors that you want to merge, then again, if this is only going to be available if the tax ID type and tax ID number are exactly the same, that merge vendors button will become available. And if you hover over it, it says, if you have eligible vendors to be merged into that vendor. So, excuse me. So once you click that button, it'll bring up another pop-up box. I don't have any examples in this particular database, or I wish I could show you. You'll choose which vendors you want to merge into the vendor you have selected. And that's a way of, kind of combining your amounts if needed. So, not sure how many of you will use that, but just so you know, that feature is now available and it seems to work pretty well. When you merge the vendors you are merging will become disabled or not, or I guess inactive, so that they can't be used going forward, and only the merged vendor will be left to be used. So that's kind of a nice feature. All right, after you check all your vendors, make sure everything's good to go. Complete your transactions for the month, and it's just regular kind of month-end stuff. Reconcile your USAS with the bank. In December, there isn't a mandatory cash reconciliation process like there is in June. So, it's up to you whether you use that feature in the system. Also, step 7, balance your cash summary and financial detail. Review any other reports you would like to run before the end of the month. And at that point, you should be ready to go. I'm not going to, so that's, you guys kind of close your months the way you do it every month. This one, it really isn't that much different, to be honest, in the system. So going on to step 9 for the calendar year end closing. Oh, yeah, this is a big one. Okay, so the very first step we have here is to check your 1099 configuration. So under system configuration, you want to make sure you look at your IRS Form 1099 submission configuration. Mouthful. Most important thing is to make sure this top checkbox, district will submit 1099 file to IRS is checked. If you had it checked for last year, it should be already checked. You shouldn't have to make that change. Most of you have gone through the painstaking process of getting your transmitter control codes, which I appreciate you doing, and you make sure that that information is also entered, as well as any contact information. Basically, this information is going to be helpful in creating your submission file to make sure it's properly formatted with the information you need for the IRS to accept it. This middle section here that says ITC submission information, just leave it blank because we're not submitting your information. You guys are submitting your own information. At the bottom, if you would like your any identification numbers to be truncated to, I believe it's maybe the last 4 digits, you can check that box. That's on your 1099 forms. If you want the full numbers, you can just leave it unchecked. Just make sure your limits are set up appropriately. And also want you to be sure that this approved for the combined federal and state filing program box is checked. That I believe puts something where it needs to be on the submission file so that not only when you submit to the IRS, it also gets filtered down to the state of Ohio. So you only have to make 1 submission. Okay, so that's step 9. All right, once you've verified your configuration, it's time to create your submission files. So this is all done under the periodic menu, under the 1099 extracts option. Okay, and just please disregard the 2021, pretend that says 2024. Just trust me on that. It's just the way this demo database was created, it's highly out of date. Everything else is the same. So make sure you choose your, make sure the payment year is set up properly. It should default to the current year that you have set for your database. So it should already say 2024. Be sure you're running your extract for 2024. I recommend running both the NEC and the miscellaneous files together. Since both can be on the same submission file, I just don't see any reason why you should create separate ones when you can submit them at the same time. All right. And by the way, this very first section I'm talking about, we're going to create a test file so that we can submit it to the test IRS site, make sure the formatting and that information is good and will be accepted under a real submission. So we're going to kind of going through the steps here to create a test submission file. All right, so IRS format. I always suggest, just so that when you go back to find these files later on in the file archive, you change the file output name, just add the word test to it, just so that you can tell the difference between this submission file and your real submission file when it gets created. So once you've labeled that as test, make sure that the other information that you have listed under your organization contact is accurate. And also ensure that this checkbox for federal and state filing is checked. And then what you'll do for your test submission is under submission type, choose the word test. I think the formatting is slightly different between the test submission and the, it's just, there's like something that's different that indicates that it's a test file when they receive it. So once that's done, at the bottom, there is a generate button. You can run this 1099 report. Basically, it's going to give you a little preview of your miscellaneous and your NEC. Give you a total, give you the total amount that you can balance from your previous reports that you may have looked at, just to make sure everything's included in your submission files. Get rid of some of this stuff here. Okay. Once your report looks good, you'll generate the file. And you'll see it's listed as with the name test in it. And it's a TAP file, which is the format that the IRS needs to accept your submission file. All right, so still in step 10, for the second part of this is to log into the test IRS fire site. So I just wanted you to be sure that you notate that it's a different URL than the regular fire site because it contains the word test in it. All right. Some people get a little confused when it comes to this step. Now, this is the other part of the bad part of this is that the IRS every year shuts their sites down for maintenance and preparation for the upcoming January craziness of accepting everything. So the current site's shut down. It is oftentimes necessary on the test IRS site to simply create a new account just to upload your file to test it out that it's okay. And it's okay if you have to create a new account every year. It takes like 2 minutes. It's not a difficult process. Not nearly as difficult as obtaining your TCC and all that stuff for the actual submission. So if you have to create a new account to do a test submission, that is reasonable. I think that's pretty normal. And most people don't remember their login information and account stuff from the test site anyway. So, you know, it's normal to create a new account. And there are instructions here on the checklist on how to do all of that. You will get, based off of the account setup, you put your email in there. You should get an email whether the result file is good or bad within a couple of days of submitting your test file. Once you get a good submission, I'm looking at page 6, step 11 on the checklist now. You will go in to create your good submission, your real submission. So make sure, again, you have the correct year, select both 1099 types. You're still creating the IRS format. You want to make sure that for your original submission, you remove that word test so that you're not confused when you go to submit that file to the IRS. You know, make sure all of the information is accurate. And this time under submission type, you're choosing original. All right. You can also print a report to make sure and give it one last verification that you've got all of the vendors you expect to be there, balance your amounts, and then generate. Again, you're getting a TAP file, which is kind of hard to read here. But I also wanted to let you know those are stored in the file archive under the calendar year reports archive. All right, again, please pretend this says 2024. So I've done this a couple times already, so I've got multiple versions here of my submission files, but that's every time you click that generate for submission, it's going to also save that TAP file in your file archive if you ever need to reference it again. The other part of step 11 is also creating your print files, which I will be printing for you in January. So to do that, you will go back to that periodic 1099 extracts. Same thing, check the year, check both options. Make sure you check both options. And the format you will choose is the printer sealer copies. All right. You have the option again if you want to truncate the identification numbers and shorten them up to the last 4, or leave the full number however you decide. And it's kind of an all or nothing thing unless you choose vendor by vendor, which might be a painstaking process. So it's up to you how you want to do that, honestly. You don't have to worry about changing the output name on this one. And you can choose original is fine. So as long as everything looks accurate, you can generate. So what this is going to do is it's going to create a PDF file that ultimately I can use to print your 1099s for you. All right. Once you have that and you go to the file archive again and make sure your PDF print file is there. Again, that's under the calendar year reports archive for the appropriate year you're working on. You should have printer sealer files in there that are PDF, and they say the word sealer on them, so they kind of stand out. Once they're in there, I mean, you can open them or generate the report and view it and make sure everything looks good. But once you know they're in the file archive, send me an email. Step 12 here, and I will print them out and get them sealed for you. And so you can either pick them up or I can drop them off, whatever is necessary for your particular district. I would like to begin printing, and I told this to the group in the morning. I would like to begin printing everything on January 13th. It takes me, for all the districts, it takes me a couple days to get everything printed out, and then usually, I don't know, I don't want to hedge here. So we'll say 3 or 4 hours to get everything folded and sealed and ready for pickup. So, I mean, at the earliest, I'm going to say Wednesday of that week, I might have some ready to go, but probably later in the week is when I'll contact you all and let you know your documents are ready for pickup or delivery if needed. All right. Keep that in mind. If you can't find anybody to pick them up, I can drop them off. Sometimes it's easier for me to do that anyways. So just let me know how you want to work that out. That's probably the most difficult process of everything. Well, maybe not. Anyways, so that's done. Step 13, we do get some questions each year, sometimes on the workers' comp purchase order and the use of the proration utility. For those of you that have used that in the past, you probably have an account filter set up that you use to generate that spreadsheet that can then be imported into a purchase order. If you're interested in using that and maybe getting that set up for the first time, feel free to reach out and let us know. I put a link to the manual in that for that section, but again, it's a utility that's available in the system if you want to use it. I mean, I know some people don't use it, so it's up to you whether you use that feature or not. There's a reminder here to run the vendor new hire report. And then step 15 is actually closing the December posting period. You wouldn't know how many times I get a phone call or something happened, somebody just forgets to close the posting period. So I always make sure to have that step on the checklist. Just if you look at it, it's there as a reminder to close December. So once you close December, all of your reports are going to run. There's a calendar year end bundle, so it may take a little longer for everything to close than a normal month, but okay. Oh, by the way, if you need to open January to start processing some January transactions before you process your 1099s, you can do that. And that's because the 1099 extract program allows you to choose what year you're processing your 1099s for. So if you have January of 2025 open so that you can create purchase orders or whatever for January, you can still go back to 2024 in the 1099 extract and generate the submission files and print files. I get kind of leery when you bounce back and forth sometimes because sometimes reports might not show the right year-to-date totals, but the submission files themselves have been programmed based on the specific year those work just fine. So if you have any questions or issues with that, let me know, but it is possible for you to have January open and still create your submission files and print files for 1099s. Let's see, anything important on this one? Step 16 is just this is the kind of the post-closing steps. Begin your January processing. We pretty much all of our checklists have running the account validation report just to make sure your accounts are valid. If you've requested any additional time to work on the 1099s or you had any issues, I just wanted to put another final step in there to remind you to do that. And then the final step on page 8 is to make sure you distribute those 1099s to the vendors by the end of January, which I always remind you guys to do, but sometimes forget to do myself for some things I got going on. So, all right, final step on page 9 here is to submit your 1099s, and that is done on the what they call the Production Fire IRS site, which is what some of you have the biggest issues with when it comes to getting this whole thing done. I want you to be reminded that when you log in, the site's down for maintenance, so I can't even show you what it looks like. But when you log in, yeah, okay. Sorry, I wish I had a screenshot of that. It's going to ask you for the district EIN, the district name, and the TCC, and I think there's like 5 pieces of information that it takes to actually log into this site. Everything needs to be typed identically and exactly the way it was typed into the application that you submitted for your TCC. So a lot of times somebody says, I can't log in, it's not letting me log in. It's because you might have put, I don't know, Tri-Valley Schools instead of Tri-Valley Local Schools or something like that. You're missing a word or missing something silly, or Lancaster Schools instead of Lancaster City Schools or something like that. However you put it in on your application is how you have to sign in. It's very touchy and secure when it comes to making sure everything's exactly in there, right? Okay. So that's the checklist. Let me go back to PowerPoint and talk about some of these deadlines. Again, I wanted to begin printing on January 13th. So if you can try to get me those 1099 print files, or not, you have to get them to me. I can get them from your database, but let me know that they're ready by that Monday. I'll have everything printed and sealed without any technical difficulties that week. Let's see. All right, so I've got file your basically this is submit your 1099s with the IRS. If you've created a combined file with the NECs and the miscellaneous all on one submission form, you could submit them all at once. I recommend doing that by the end of January. If for some reason you've separated them, the NECs are due by just January 31st, and the miscellaneous forms are due by the March 31st. So I wanted to kind of take you to the screenshot that I took from that fire website about the availability of the website. So the production site, the one where you're submitting your real file or real submission, is expected to be back up on January 13th. So you actually can't even log in to do your submission. It basically gives you 2 weeks to get that submitted by the time it's back up from its annual updates. The test site will be available on January the 7th, approximately. So you can do your testing and the following week do your real one, as long as you get that test submission back with a good file rating. So Yeah, I know that's inconvenient. It seems like that those updates get pushed back later and later every year, but and then a reminder of our availability. We kind of did something a little different this year. We're actually closed on Christmas Eve and New Year's Eve, as well as Christmas Day and New Year's Day. Most of you guys are closed also, but we should, either Tiffany and I should be available every one of the days outside of that, those dates. So if you need us for anything, feel free to reach out. And with that, does anybody have any issues or questions that they would like to talk about? All right, I appreciate you all being in attendance, and again, we're here if you need us for anything. Everybody have a good day.
Thanks, Jake.
Yep.